Hello, everyone.
So
Today we have joining us from NCR, Michael Hedgepeth and John Carey, who's going to be speaking with us about rapid prototyping and organizational change, also some of the cultural and compliance challenges that they've faced during their journey with Chef. So John, Michael, welcome.
thank you. Thanks, everybody. This is, as we said earlier, canary in a coal mine, initiating organizational change through rapid prototyping pressure at NCR. I am Michael Hedgepeth. I come from a software background, so technically I'm a software architect, but I work to bring our Chef implementation together for all of our hospitality software as a solution products. And I blog there at hedge-shops.com, and you can find me on Twitter. Please only say nice things at Michael Hedgepeth.
I'm John Carey. I am doomed to Google obscurity for the rest of my life. I kicked myself for not registering the domain when I was 12. There's my email, blog, doesn't have a lot on it. Twitter also does not have much. I lead a DevOps team of 2 for a strategic product that is disconnected but in the same organization as Michael. We were really the canary in the coal mine to figure out whether or not Chef is going to survive at NCR. We used our product needs to really drive how we operate and how we got things done. So this is a talk about that.
Yeah, so before we give you a walkthrough of our journey with Chef and challenges we face and things that we've learned along the way, we'll give you a little insight on NCR. NCR is the world leader in omnichannel consumer transaction technology, and I did not write that. Yeah, the marketing people wrote that. And what's important, we'll get into that omnichannel consumer transaction technology, but what's important for this talk for you to understand is that we're a really, really big company. So we have 27,000 employees. John and I are within the same division, but as you can see within my clip art org chart right there, we are in completely different areas, completely different bosses. So he's on a product, I'm in kind of a central, operations type of role, but within development. So we face a lot of challenges with how to deal with people in large organizations. That's kind of what this is geared toward. NCR, a long time ago, 135 years ago actually, innovated in the retail space to invent the cash register. So before NCR came along, there would be just a money bag and somebody likely stealing from you that if they're not the owner, taking transactions. And so we innovated that process and invented the cash register. And that worked for us for a really long time. And that, in terms of channels for us, that is a single channel. So a channel in commerce terms is just what way does a customer interact with you as a business. There was generally one channel that a retail organization would interact with customers with. It was walking into the store and interacting with the point of sale, and we provided the technology to make that happen. And then within the restaurant space, which is where John and I work, you started maybe 30 years ago having a little bit of innovation around technology on adding more channels. So you might call in for a pizza, or you might do a takeout order. We started like in the 90s seeing the parking space at Chili's that you would do a to-go order, that kind of thing. So there were few channels to deal with, but when we talk about omnichannel, it's about an explosion that's happened where there are so many channels for an organization to deal with, and John and I try to help make that a little easier for people by giving them a technology platform within which to process those channels.
Right, so now we have channels all over the place. Specifically on my team, we build the Rails, the APIs, and the websites to sell food to people. And we have developers that are playing around with like Amazon Echo integration, in-dash ordering and vehicles. Our customers are demanding new channels, but the cool thing for me, and to keep me employed, is that the API is the commonality for all that. Right? You're gonna need an application interface to get down into the site, to drop those orders, to fire at the back of the house. So here we have a list of, just for perspective, some of the customers that hospitality operates on, and a good many number of these, internationally as well as domestic. our online ordering customers. And we continue to onboard new customers and really drive to make these customers successful, which is what it's really all about. So in order to keep all this perspective, or in perspective, you should kind of understand where we came from. I joined online ordering about 3 years ago. At the time, our team was pretty small, and I became like the deployment guy. Like, he can handle SQL, so if something blows up in the middle of the night, he's the guy to go do it. So really, deployment automation became my thing pretty early. And what we knew was that scale was coming. We could sense the hockey stick that was going to occur. We had a lot of customers that have been kind of getting their feet wet for a long time, but they're really big customers, and when they do go big, they go really, really big. And because I'm the deployment guy, I know that the tools that we have at the time are not suitable for that kind of scale. Right? They work, and we're okay at what we do, but as soon as we have to really hit scale events, we're not going to be able to make it with what we have. So we need to address this problem now. And my leadership agreed, so we started down that path.
Yeah, at the same time, John and I hadn't met yet, and at the same time, the challenges I was having were completely different. So I started out in development and worked my way into software architecture. A lot of that having to do with test-driven development, continuous integration, agile, the stuff that happens within a development team. And I kept being driven closer and closer to the customer. So for a few years, I spent time doing test automation for our core products to ensure that we have a good, accurate regression going into restaurants. And in doing massive investments on our pipeline, I realized that until we solve the delivery problem, which is that moment that it leaves my hands and it goes into production, we're really not solving the whole problem. So I felt like over the years I had been optimizing great things, doing great things, but optimizing maybe the wrong things, where the slowest and most the slowest part of the system is going to be the part that you should be focusing on. And I realized that delivery was the part that I needed to be focused on. That's what got me into Chef, because I saw a really great opportunity for us to be able to automate the delivery of our software as a service types of applications for our customers. So we decided to use Chef. John and I met in January last year, 2015.
Yep.
And at a proof of concept type of engagement that we did with Chef as a part of their sales process.
And the position of my product was then the call goes out like, hey, we need a product to attend a prototype. And I'm like, yeah, online ordering, let's do it.
Yeah.
I'll be that guy.
So John's the perfect candidate for us initiating Chef in our organization because of what we were just talking about, the omnichannel reality, and his team and product is really at the center of that for us. And so we needed to innovate in order to reach the scale that John and his team were expecting. So today we're going to talk about mistakes we made along the way that hopefully you won't make yourselves, lessons that we learned, hopefully you can learn some lessons, and then some outcomes that would inspire you to go on about a similar change trajectory that we did. So the first mistake that I made is I started kind of top down. I started with, okay, we need to do this big thing, Chef. I got Chef involved, that was great. I got my leadership on board, that was great. But in retrospect, I probably should have talked to John first and had gotten his experience and buy-in. I think luckily we invited him very late in the process, and luckily he got on board. That was a very big luckily. I mean, he could have been, he could have come to me and said, you know, you idiot. Yeah, I've been using this other technology this whole time, and I've got it running. Why are you even talking to Chef right now? And then I would have been totally blown out of the water with my kind of top-down approach. So if I would have done it again, I would have found John like at the very beginning and not toward the end.
But what would the engagement have looked like? If you did it all over again, you would go to John and say, I'm going to solve your scale challenges by increasing delivery speed.
So the question yeah, go ahead.
You got it.
So the question is, what would the engagement look like if I would have done it the right way? It would have probably, I think we got lucky. It would have probably ended up the same because John and I really work together, and I could have said, I'm thinking about chef, let's do these experiments or everything. I think, though, that we probably would have gotten a lot more out of the political mess that we'll talk about a little bit later, and more to results that would have fueled faster growth with our chef adoption if we would have not done this. So this probably cost us political stuff that we'll talk about later in the thing. Yeah.
So the problem that he had is that he needed real pressure to get it done, so that business problems can be handled. The worst thing you can do with one of these transformations is to go to your execs and say, I want to do this big scary thing and it's going to take forever and it's going to pay off when we're done. So just trust me, right? You don't want to bet that because that's putting your job on the line. And I have tons of pressure, but I need a safety net to take risk in. I need, like, if I'm going to really burn my capital, if I'm going to say I'm going to do this really scary, dangerous thing, it's easier for people to accept that when I can say, I'm going to use that to build a model to make all of your other products safer and give them a higher velocity. But I can't do that without Michael, without a broader vision. So the next lesson learned is that innovators can break rules. So it would have been really easy for Michael to design the ivory tower picture of the way chef integration works inside NCR, and to have forced me, attempted to have forced me, to do what he wanted. But it's not always going to work that way, especially in the beginning, because you need to keep your focus on solving business problems, the immediate problem at hand. So really early on, I go back and I tell my management, hey, this DevOps stuff, nobody knows what it is. We don't know what it is, but we're going to do it. I'm going to do it, and we're going to get ourselves out of the hole. And luckily, they bought on, and I start going down the chef path. And then, about a month in, I stopped. I'm like, ooh, it's a brownfield application. This is a lot of work. What happens when I make it to the finish line? I get to production, and I say, hey guys, we're going to deploy to chef. And they go, nah, sorry, it's not big enough. It hasn't been pen tested appropriately. There are a lot of problems that should have been addressed globally, and then they're not done. So I have this conversation with Michael, and I go, hey, can you actually survive this? Are you going to be there standing with me when I make it to the finish line?
Yeah, and what they didn't tell me when I started down this path is that there were a lot of other people that came before me that had these, quote unquote, great ideas. They said, we just need to do this, and then they didn't really push them through, wasted everybody's time, and nothing happened. And so John didn't know me, I didn't know John, and I never heard that story either until afterwards. So he was kind of wondering if I was the same type of thing. Are you just going to try to get me to waste a bunch of time on this thing that's never going to happen?
And the thing that made it work was that he told me, if you make it work for you, it'll be okay for you. All right? Hopefully we can take what you've done and we can use that as a template for everybody else, but if it works for online ordering and online ordering is happy, you can keep moving forward with that. And that at least gave me enough justification to tell the business, yes, I can solve your problems with this technology, and it will definitely work for us. I've at least got support that far. So a great example of this rule breaking, heinous rule breaking, I thought I was alone in this, but it turns out from the keynote I'm not, is we got stalled really early on because we're a PCI product, and we wanted, obviously, the one chef server to rule them all across all environments, from dev to prod, and that doesn't sound too nice when you're really thinking about security. And the ideal model is that you have your chef server in your jailed environment, and then nothing can get to it, ever, other than the one guy that has the key. And we kept going back and forth in this, it wasn't making it anywhere, and finally, I kind of had one of those, existential crisis moments, and I kind of snap in the middle of the meeting with Michael and the operations team and say, how about I just do it in local mode? All right, that's crazy, but we already use it. We already used local mode to deploy it to Test Kitchen. We're using it to deploy, we're using Chef already to deploy to our lower environments. So are you telling me you would rather take this untested method and continue to deploy the way we have been, or use the thing we're already deploying to all our lower environments to? And
so that was kind of a shocking thing to my design, but the reality is I wanted it to work more than I wanted it to be perfect. And that was a key outcome or a key lesson key lesson that I've learned is you always have to, working is always more important than perfection. Perfection is the enemy of good enough. But the unintended consequence, positive consequence of this is that we kept things as much the same as we possibly could, and that's what helped the organization really wrap their mind around Chef. So if I had to count the number of meetings where I got into where we talked about what is DevOps, like if I have another what is DevOps meeting, I think I'm gonna, go crazy. Like, is it dev? Are you trying to keep the dev out of the ops? Or are we keeping the ops out of the dev? Or how are they together? And all that stuff, people
For
are really...
real reasons. I mean, we're a PCI product,
Yeah.
so the security thing is real. Devs can't touch production. But it's the wrong conversation to have in the context
Yeah.
of how do I deploy my things?
The right conversation to have is, we're going to do this deployment. Chef is just scripts. We were running PowerShell scripts. We were running some method. We're going to run this other method. It's in local mode. Let's start adopting that. Let's start wrapping our mind around that reality. And all of a sudden, Chef is not this, evil god of war, because it's almost like people were also thinking of it as a mythical monster, because they read these articles and they hear this talk about Chef, and it's going to change everything, and that they view that as a threat to them, to their jobs or to their way of thinking about things, but it's really not. It's a change. And with local mode, we were able to say, you were running scripts before, you're running scripts now, it's a different technology platform. Yes, we're going to put a bunch of things on top of that to let it scale, but for now, let's do this. And everybody rallied around to make that happen. Which kind of brings me to our next lesson learned, which is that deadlines are king. I realized at the early part of this that it was really difficult to meet with people. It was difficult to meet with a security person to get my model approved or whatever it is. And they were basically giving me about an hour a week, and about the first 45 minutes I was having to re-explain what it was we talked about the last time. So we were basically getting nothing done until brilliant John idea number 2 happened. This talk is really about how John's brilliant, which is...
It seems like I have a lot of these existential moments. I'm sitting in another meeting and it's not going anywhere and we're not moving forward. And meanwhile, we have like real configuration-driven issues, right? I mean, minor outages and handleable, but we have some outages that are occurring in production. And I've got the solution. I've already done it. It's Chef. It's there. It's ready to go. But we're still talking about like how does Chef get implemented in a couple months and what things do we need to do to prepare for it? And I maybe unwisely snapped a little bit again and said, well, I have a customer problem. I have the fix for it. I'm going to go to production in 2 weeks. Like, this is going to happen in 2 weeks. So let's change the conversation from what do we do to prepare for this thing that may occur to what do we do in the next 2 weeks so that we are safe and everybody is happy. And if you tell me it can't happen, that's okay. But I really need to get this out because our customers are hurting and I can fix that. And it completely changes the conversation. And I'm really, really proud of the way the team operates. I mean, like, developers and operation, everybody, right? We're really trained on action. Right? We have something to fix. Once there's something to fix and act on, we really get things done. It turns into action items and lists and trackable goals and things like that.
Yeah, people's schedules opened up. It was crazy. Yeah.
But NCR, we really, really care about security. It's a really big thing. So it was what could have appeared to have been a death march for 2 weeks, getting everything together, but we did get it together. We did it safely, and those customer issues were solved. We didn't have to worry about them anymore. And it's just, it's awesome to see all of that come together. So an outcome here that was completely unexpected of the two of us. Like we're bestest of buds and we're gonna work together all the time and it's gonna be great. And after we finish this hurdle, we're gonna go back and I'm gonna undo all the things that I cheated on to get us here. But you always need to keep your eye on the next business problem and the next target state. So we get this done. We've built a really solid deployment and delivery pipeline.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think you made a key point there. I wanted to make sure I understood it. The galvanizing force that said, do this in 2 weeks to solve a problem. That was it? That was the galvanizing effort? It was just, no, we're just going to do it, get behind it, and let's just get it done? Let's forget about pontificating about what it might mean in this monstrous beast no one understands to, we're
Exactly.
doing it, let's just get it done.
Right, so the question was, what was the galvanizing force for action? And that was the deadline, right? Whenever I put a choke on it and said, this is cool. We can have all these theoretical discussions, but it's going to happen in 2 weeks in some form.
And
right?
it was the deadline within local mode, which wasn't threatening to them. So you're just running scripts. You were running scripts before, you're running scripts now. So they didn't see that as a potential security crisis by not understanding all the ins and outs of the system. So the local mode, and then, okay, we did the local mode, and actually the other conversation you had that maybe we missed was, guys, I am testing this in development, testing it in QA with Chef, testing it in our pre-prod UAT environment. Do you want me to deploy this into production like I've tested it? Or do you want me to deploy this into production some other way, like the old way? And so now it was on them, and the risk assessment of that situation totally changed for them, where they're like, oh, I think we want it to be like test, you know?
Right. The conversation actually separated Chef client from Chef server. Chef server is the scary thing. It's really, really big and full of security problems if you don't really know what's going on. Or if you haven't
It's
researched
really not,
enough.
but from their perspective, it was
At the
so
time.
new. Yeah, they felt like it was a threat to them.
But Chef Client is just scripts. It's a script engine, and that's it. Right. So the target state. We're rocking code out to production with a tighter time frame that we had operated on before, and suddenly my next business problem becomes something completely different. I'm not going to go back and I'm not going to undo local mode. We are a policy file shop. Whoops.
Which are awesome.
Yeah. Part of that work would be I skipped past policy files. I went straight in with environments. And I thought that my next target state was going to be to work on that stuff to support the vision. But it turns out that we built this really awesome pipeline to get things into production, and it highlighted a real serious need for increased testing and continuous integration early on in the process. So my focus turns internal. And I'm no longer directly supporting Muggle's vision anymore. And local mode, I would love to tell you that like our approach is all roses and great, but local mode deployments have its cost. In doing that, there's a lot of boilerplate work that my team has to go in validating environment files and packaging up repos and getting them to the right place that add a lot of manual work for my folks. And it's something that we're working to get out of, but know that you will need to cut corners with your rapid approach to organizational change, and those corners will have a cost to them, or cutting those corners will have a cost.
Yeah, and it's easy to get to the end of a project or even a sprint and say, if we would have just done these other things differently, we wouldn't have had the problems that we have today. And with local mode, we came out of the situation where we really understood why the Chef server was awesome, and that was great. But I would have totally done it again. We had those problems, but we were predicting that the Chef server was our next thing that John needed. But if he would not have, if we would have not done that next iteration, we wouldn't have learned that this was the really next important thing. And that's the key outcome or lesson that we had was that you cannot really predict very far out on what the next important thing is going to be. You have to iterate, and when you
don't
iterate,
try to.
Yeah, don't even try. Have a plan in place. We have a long-term vision, but when we iterated, we saw that was the next thing, and John and I both, my experience in continuous integration stuff made me totally get on board with what John was doing, and the investments led to these awesome outcomes. So we have the Scale event on the horizon last January, and it's kind of important to take a step back and think of things empathetically through our customers' perspective, and even the business community at large. I meet very few organizations that don't feel threatened right now existentially. So they are being threatened by an Amazon or a Netflix or an Uber or an Airbnb, somebody who is disrupting their industry and disrupting their potential leadership in that industry if they're a large organization. And our customers feel the same way. They know that if you're 13 to 25 and you're not going to be able to order a chicken sandwich on your phone, you might go to the one next door where you can. And so they feel that crisis. They also didn't grow up dreaming about being a technology company. And so the leadership is really about, in the hospitality sector, is really about bringing people together with food and good food and creating great experiences with that. And so they need partnership with people like NCR to create that, create these technology outcomes that they didn't even envision 10 years ago. So they're facing this existential crisis. They want to get into the online ordering, app ordering type of business. And John's software is going to be the API driver to make that happen for them.
Right.
And so it's a go big or go home kind of moment for them. And so John's going to explain a couple of situations that we had with this scale and how Chef helped us deliver these services to two of our really key but unnamed customers.
Yeah. Go ahead. 5 hours with database changes. Yeah, we'll get to that. The question was, what was the original downtime window that turned into 5 to 15 minutes?
Yeah.
We had my product had one that was developed in the past. It was actually deployment logic wrapped up into a C# compiled Windows web form, or WinForm app. So, yeah, it was hand rolled. And it worked for a long time until we hit major scale. So on major scale, we've got a large pizza chain customer in the Northeast. And like, when's the last time you ordered pizza and you didn't do it online? Like, I can't remember. Maybe I've called somewhere, but it's been a really long time. Online sales is a really big, important part of the pizza business. And they chose us as that partner, which is really cool for us. And it shows a big investment in faith. And they totally surprise us. We set up the infrastructure. Our servers. We work with our operations team to make that happen, and we planned some overhead. And then Cyber Monday occurs, and out of nowhere, our servers are like way at the edge, like terrifyingly close to the edge. And we limp through that day. It's okay. Pizza is sold, and then we found out after the fact, like, hey, we really like you guys, so we offered a BOGO promotion, and everybody loved it. And we're like, wow, that's awesome, cool. I'm glad we made you successful. By the way, it was so good that we're going to continue to do this throughout the end of the year, every Monday. And everybody knows about it, so it's going to be even bigger. And we're going to tell you about this Thursday before a Monday. Right? So it turns into like this, again, really proud moment for the way our operations team and our development team came together on this, and our QA team. We circle the wagons, we create a big bridge call and say, we need to double our data center size by Monday. We need to have it ready by Saturday, or deployed by Saturday, so that we can test it Saturday night, and then Sunday, watch it, let it bake, make sure everything's good, and watch the customer be successful on Monday. This is the first really big proving ground for Chef inside NCR, because we've gone through, at the beginning of the story, I'm navel gazing, saying, oh yeah, we're gonna see the hockey stick, and it's gonna happen, we gotta be ready for it. This is the first time it's here, and we've gotta make it happen, right? Everyone believes in me, let's get it done. And it works, right? No problem. Monday rolls around, we're able to get all this stuff done, the servers are in place, customer is successful, and they're so successful and they like it so much that they decide to invest even further in us and go for national promotions, or national like radio and TV ads for these promotions in the following year, which leads to a 5x increase over our already 2x increase in our data center sizes. The next major emergence we lovingly refer to as Chickengeddon, a unnamed southeastern purveyor of chicken in a fast food setting, tells us that we're going to go live, right? We've been investing in your technology for a number of years. We're going to release an app, and we're going to tell everybody the app is there, and we're going to give away free food. And that's terrifying, right? Really terrifying. Free food gets everybody, especially at a national level. So we ask for numbers, and we hand those numbers off to our core team and say, hey, using the existing environment that we have, tell us how many servers we're going to need to scale up to be able to handle this. And our largest, most production-like environment was fairly small, which makes your estimations a little off. And they come back with a ludicrous, like 10x increase over the already doubled and 5x increase of the data center. And we're sitting, I remember this room, like the numbers written on the board, and everyone goes silent. All four of us are sitting there, we're just staring at the number, like, what does this even mean? right? And my team, I think we're okay because like once you deploy to 1, that's one thing. When you deploy to 2, it's something different. When you deploy to 3, it's the same as 2 if you did it the right way.
Yeah,
So,
and at this time, I think John and I talked, and we're like, this is going to be great for Chef. We're going to deploy these, this number of servers that is previously mind-blowing. It's going to go off without a hitch. What a great, awesome story this is going to be.
but
We
it
weren't stressed
sucks
out.
to be the operation team because you're going to need to give me all those boxes.
Yeah.
Right. So we take a step back and we're like, well, maybe that's not the right way to approach this. How about we provision a performance testing environment and create a rapid deployment pipeline to that performance testing environment, make it production-like, pretty large, and
Which
give
we
them
could do because we had Chef.
right,
Yep.
and give them the ability to go and just rapidly test things, try to fix what you can, and just deploy multiple times a day, and they do that. And meanwhile, I'm going to my wife and kid going, hey, Daddy's gonna disappear for like a month. We're gonna get really close to this chicken thing and I'm not gonna be able to come home, so take pictures. Like a month out of the promotion, after they've been iterating so quickly and fixing a lot of things and doing a real good job, a new number is written on the board. And it is exactly the number of servers we already have in production. Right? So Chef didn't just allow us to scale, it allowed us to build infrastructure that saved the business ludicrous amounts of money and prevent an emergency. So this thing that we thought was going to be a death march all the way up until release night, or promotion night, didn't happen. Right? We just sat there and we watched it, and the scale arrived, and it was okay. And look, there's the hockey stick I thought was going to come 2 years ago. And there's no problem. The customer hits their target in 11 days. It's a really great story. It's great for the customer, it's great for us, and it's really good for Chef and DevOps and NCR because that's the first time that we can really show at massive scale, like your investment in agility will pay off. And we did it.
John, I'm sorry, so the game changer that Chef provided you was the ability to deploy multiple times a day to the performance test environment and improve the performance of the app to handle the traffic without
Right.
linear growth in infrastructure.
First, to be able to say, the performance testing environment was like 30 boxes. To be able to go, well, let's take our interior application, deploy to 30 machines, boom, just do
And
it.
trust that it's production-like.
It's all consistent.
Yeah.
And then iterate, change quickly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And by the way, he had invested in his continuous integration pipeline because I didn't make him go on the death march of Michael's, key initiatives. He did his own thing. He invested in that. That turned into a rapid performance testing from this production-like environment, which eliminated the need of increasing resources in production.
PowerShell, Saki, Chef. We called it the code cannon. Just blasted the performance environment over and over again.
Yeah.
It was a great story. And then the last thing that we already touched on a little bit is that, kind of a side effect, all this stuff happens. We weren't actually targeting this outcome, but we were able, through load balancer rotation and clever use of Chef and our database changes, we were able to shrink our downtime window from 5 hours to 15 minutes, 5 to 15 minutes, depending on the number of database changes in that release. So this is great for all customers and totally unplanned, but we got it. The question was, can I delve into what kind of database changes I'm referring to? So we have 2-week sprints. It's a multi-tenant application, so every tenant has their own MS SQL database. And it's just schema changes. But sometimes, if you happen to be lucky that release and you get the order table change that has millions of records, then it can take a little while, especially if you're smart and you default your column to non-null. Yeah, but again, you're going to see all this stuff come out of it. You're not even going to plan for it, but it's there, and it's for additional ways to justify your investment.
As part of those data changes, do you guys require for your testing to get roll back to starting point again and then restart that testing cycle? Is there a need in your environment to do that?
So point-wise rollbacks was the question. Do we have that, or is that a need? Surely there's a need. I'm not sure if we've tackled that yet because it hasn't been the most important problem to hit. Right now, our rollback cycle is before and after a release target, right? So we have the ability to roll back in time if we need to, but we're awesome, so we regularly exercise that.
Yeah, in this situation, the performance problems were at the application layer, not the data layer. So they,
But those can shift, right? So there has to be contingency for that.
Certainly.
yep. So our final lesson is that you've got to move on. I had a a roadmap in place that for implementing Chef in our organization.
Right, and my focus was completely internal. I'm like, hey, you go do
Yeah,
something else.
for
I've
good
got
reason,
I got
because
things
we
to
saw
do.
we saw the hockey stick, and so John was doing the right thing. I was doing the right thing. So John invested in the CI pipeline, as we just talked about. I invested into working with another team, and also another thing I invested in is working with our security organization. So turning them from viewing Chef as a threat to viewing Chef as an opportunity for compliance at Velocity. But we kept supporting each other,
Right,
and being friends.
Yeah. So some of the things that he's doing at a global level actually help out my CI process a lot. I have a lot of problems with like how do I pair my info code with my deployment artifacts, and how do I migrate them between environments? Turns out, policy files are a good way to do that. So some of my CI problems are really benefit by what he's doing, and I'm on the same calls. I leverage product pressure wherever I can, but I'm not focused anymore, and that's a good thing because one product cannot be your continual focus.
And so some takeaways.
Other than like my team is awesome, and we
Yeah.
can handle cool things. These are like the couple of things that I think you should really take away, supposing you've fallen asleep in the audience. The first is make sure that you're always solving real problems, right? You could get yourself into a business justification problem really fast where you say, I want to do this really cool thing and it's going to take a long time, but it's awesome for you. If you really target current business problems and solve them as quickly as possible, but keep an eye on the vision that you want globally, you're never going to have anybody pull you into a boardroom and say, hey, I think you might be wasting our time. Maybe we should put you back on the development team. Everyone will think you're a rock star. That's a good place to be.
And my lesson is to use as much of the existing process as possible. It's really easy to come to a conference like this and Chef's grand vision of everything and get really excited about it. I'm excited about it as well. But I break that grand vision down into bite-sized chunks that I can experiment with and implement. And I try not to get too many people afraid and theoretical. So what is the next thing that everyone would be like, oh, that's a little different, but I'm okay with that. What's that thing that we can do right now to drive this grand vision forward? And the less I talk about DevOps or some ethereal end state that I want to get to, the more efficient and effective I am in my organization. The final takeaway is that we are a software company. We have customers that pay us money for software, and that's awesome. We love it. But that also means that our leadership really understands the investments needed to create the growth that we want to create within our organization. And executive support for us was very easy. So you didn't hear a lot about fighting with your leadership to get them to let you do this kind of thing. And maybe you guys being at ChefConf don't have those fights either, since you're here. But if you're watching over YouTube or whatever, we didn't really talk about that. And I think that that's probably another talk that would be interesting to listen to it and what executive support.
And if you're having problems with that, the Chef Customer Success Program is a really great way to get some insight there.
Yeah, they really helped us out with that.
They're not paying me.
Oh, there's my Zooms. Okay. So that is our talk. We are almost out of time, I think. We have
2 minutes.
Time for a couple of questions.
Michael,
Yes.
The cross-functional engagement between you guys, it wasn't the typical one side on a development and one side on ops. You guys are both in kind of the development arm of technology, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So the question was, well, the interaction between the two of us, we were really both inside the development vertical and not between dev or ops or anything like that.
Yeah, and I kind of was making a transition. Right now, I am inside of the production access operations side of our organization, but still maintain a development title. So it's kind of weird, but
when you guys did this, did you run into resistance or have to get the operational side of the house on board with the whole vision, or was it just follow?
yeah. The question is, did we have to get operations on board with it, and how difficult was that? There was no challenge with getting them on board with the outcome. They really saw the need for automation to create the scale and growth that we needed at all levels.
The particulars were a little difficult. I know for a fact our operations side was starting to look at Puppet before we started this, and it started to train a little bit there, just a little bit, but enough to make at least the technological choice a little sandpapery.
Yeah. And I think also I didn't respect the cultural difference between development and operations enough to be able to empathize with their problems. So I was, at the beginning, I came at it from a development perspective of, oh, this is change, it's going to be awesome, come on, just get on board. And they came at it from a perspective of developers are idiots when they say that and they're going to ruin everything. And
I spent a lot of my time in these early meetings. Actually, I have no idea how I found myself in this position, but kind of like negotiating a divide between the two. Like, this is, Michael, this is what operations just said.
He was helping me.
This is what Michael really means.
Yeah, he's not a chaotic idiot. So.
Certainly, yeah.
The local mode was a big one. Yeah.
I totally want like the delivery style, like chef server to rule them all, and my code flows from development all the way into production.
Yeah.
Nope, we have multiple stops here, but we're not the only people in this environment. We have to empathize with that.
We got time for one more?
Sure.
Yep.
Did you have trouble kind of mimicking that prod environment and test? Did you run into fights with security as far as, if you have an external facing app, do they really want to open that environment up externally?
Yeah, so the question was, do we have difficulty mocking our prod environment in earlier environments? Definitely. And I will be the first person to say I did this the wrong way. My model was like, because it was a brownfield app and it had been deployed for a number of years before I got there. So my approach, the metaphor is the cookie cutter, right? Like I build the cookie cutter that fit dev, and then I took that cookie cutter and I slammed it onto QA, and I'm like, oh, those are the dangly bits that fell off. Well, let's modify the cookie cutter so that it fits both dev and QA. Now let's move to UAT, and then pre-prod, and then production. The problem is when every environment, when you cut off little bits of your environment and problems are created, that really sucks when that happens in prod. So the first time, I mean, we sucked at this 2 years ago. And we haven't been at this a long time. And we've come a long way in the last 2 years. The first time I hit prod with Chef, it caused problems. We had to roll it back, and I had to refactor that and get it into place. So I guess another lesson would be like start prod down.
Yeah.
There was no way for us to take prod and put it into QA because it's a public-facing app and security is super essential because we're processing credit card data. So I had to start with our testing environments and move forward.
Yeah, and the lesson that I learned on a different product is it's a really good pattern to, if you're going to production or even test, to create a new machine, provision Chef on that, and then get rid of the other machine. So you have sort of a soup to nuts Chef built machine. And that was part of the lessons that you were learning, is that you kind of ran Chef on top of something that had already been dealt with, and you didn't really know all the changes that happened to that server.
Yeah,
you had to learn.
You can do what you want to as you approach production. When you approach production, when you're there, Phoenix every box.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we're out of time. John and I will be out in the hallway. We'd love to answer your other questions that you have. We'll be out there for the next half an hour or so. So thanks, guys.
Thanks.
John, Michael, thank you for taking the time to speak with us today.